Hello everyone, my name is Yuchen, and today I'm going to be discussing one of the most critical and persistent issues in the society around the world, the widening gap between the rich and the poor, and the inequalities it creates. This issue has significant implications for social mobility, political power, and overall social health. First, let me ask you a question. Have you ever wondered why, despite hard work, some people seem to get richer and richer, while others struggling just to survive? The reality is that the rich tend to get richer and the poor tend to get poorer. But why does this happen? Is it inevitable? And most importantly, how can we change it? Let's dive into these questions today. The gap between the rich and the poor, also known as the economic inequality, refers to the uneven distribution of the wealth, income, and the resources in society. It's not just about the money, it's about the access to the resources like education, healthcare, opportunities, and political influence. And the thing is, the gap isn't just a statistic, it impacts real lives. The rich have the advantages that make it easier for them to continue the accumulating wealth. For example, they have access to the high quality of the education, healthcare, and professional networks that give them better job opportunity. They can invest in stocks, real estate, or businesses, which generates positive income for them. Essentially, the more resource they have, the more resource they can generate. It's like the cycle that continues to feed itself, leaving the rich increasingly richer. And on the other hand, the poor lack access to the same resources. Many of them don't have the educational opportunities, healthcare, or financial support to break out their poverty. They have worked hard, but often only make enough to get by, not enough to get ahead. This is the reality of the inequality, and the playing field isn't level. You might be thinking, I'm not rich, but I'm doing okay. Why should I care about the wealth gap? This is the common thought, but let me explain why this issue is relevant to all of us. First, the wealth gap is not just an economy problem, it's a social stability issue. When the gap between the rich and the poor becomes too large, the cohesion of the society is broken. Trust between different segments of the society diminishes, and it divides between the wealth and the impoverished growth, which leads to greater social division and mistrust. Eventually, the inequality can lead to the political instability. Second, the widening wealth gap often means that the poor have less opportunity to voice their concerns in the political arena. In many countries, wealthy individuals and large corporations have the disproportionate political influence. Through donation, lobbying, and even country media outlets, they can shape the public opinions and influence government decisions. As a result, policies are often shifted to benefits to wealthy, while the needs of the poor are neglected. Have you ever noticed that the government tax policies, social welfare programs, and education reforms tend to favor large corporations and affluent? But this is not just a political issue. When the wealth gap widens, fairness in society is under permits. Social mobility decreases, which means more poor people are trapped into the poverty, while the wealthy continue to solidify their position and wealth. The vicious cycle not only affects the impoverished, but ultimately harms society as a whole. Now, have you ever realized that despite working hard, the dream of owning a house has become nearly impossible for normal people? Even basic needs like housing, which were once achievable for most, have now become out of reach of the normal people. The situation is getting worse, and it will continue if we do nothing. When a growing number of the individuals can meet even their basic needs despite hard work, instability is bound to follow. That affects everyone, whether you are rich, poor, or somewhere in between. It can also lead to social unrest, division, and distrust in the system. Now that we have acknowledged that the wealth gap as a serious social issue, what can we do to solve it? Change the status quo is no easy task because it's a complex issue, and I don't even have the answer. However, I'd like to share some of my thoughts on how we can start addressing it. Many people believe that the widening wealth gap is the result of the inequality, but if everyone were equal, the gap would continue to grow, as I mentioned earlier. The resource wealthy people can invest in their children are far beyond what poor family can provide. When someone has the access to better resources and education, it's not surprised that they are more likely to succeed and ensure better position. This is why the rich continue to get richer and the poor get stuck in the poverty. What we actually need is not the equality, but a form of the inequality that benefits the poor. This superficial the treatment would prevent the wealth gap from growing, but the ideas of favoring the disadvantaged conflicts with our unusual values of the fairness and equality. From a political perspective, if we simply try to punish the wealthy, it might diminish the incentive to create wealth. After all, much of the wealth in the society is created by these elite individuals. For example, if we were to pass law that confiscates wealth over a certain threshold and raise them to the poor, we might not have the technology and innovations that we benefit from today. Take Bill Gates as an example. If we had taken away his wealth, we might still be using an outdated version of Windows instead of the advanced systems we have today. The result might be that the wealthy are less wealthy, the poor remains poor, and the society misses out the future innovation. So, how can we strike with the right balance? Finding the right degree of the unfairness is a difficult challenge. In conclusion, the widening wealth gap is not just an economy issue, it's a fundamental social problem that affects the social cohesion, fairness, and political stability. The rich continue to grow wealthier, while the poor are left behind in a circle of their poverty that seems increasingly difficult to escape. However, though, the solution to this issue is not just simple or just straightforward. Equal distribution is not the answer, as it could suppress the drive for the innovation and the productivity that creates wealth in the first place. Instead, we need a system that recognizes the disparities in the resources and works to address this imbalance in a way that allows everyone to thrive without stifling the productive forces of the wealthy.